We are back. Giants baseball, past, present, future. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Some of my friends call me Zig. Ian calls me Zig. He's with me today. Ian Kahanowitz. How are you, sir?
Me, I'm doing remarkably well. It's always good to be with you, Zigman, and you're doing a fine job with the network. I'm learning, I like the Mark and Mark at midday show. I like how you renamed my show, Genesis in the Zone. I like that, because I am part of the Comfortably Zone network, radio, and I like Golan Bach University, your discussions with Hal Bach, and I love the Twins and Senators, and you got a really good lineup of people that...
to say nothing of Weighted Donuts with Wayne Hunger, The Dodgers Show with Ronnie Rabinowitz and Peter Trunk, what we do with the Giants Show. This is terrific. This is terrific for me. It's a good way to go into my final years, and I know I'm leaving something behind that... it's all archived on YouTube and will be looked at in 100 years. And and David Nemec and Alan Lumpkin.
That's right.
We got some high-powered folks in who have chronicled baseball for years and years and years. And I'm so proud of what I've put together. It's just cool beans, as they say. And this is one of my favorite shows because I was a New York Giant fan back in my youth. And I remember the Polo Grounds and Willie Mays, and I remember the Giants before Willie Mays. And I remember being traumatized literally at age 10 when the Giants of New York became the Giants of San Francisco. And I had a lot to think about as a 10-year-old. Where are my allegiance? And it turns out that for one reason or another, the first year was kind of tough. I really rooted for the Braves. The year they left in 57, the Braves were in the World Series. Giants were gone. I really rooted for the Braves hard against the Yankees. And 58, I rooted for the Braves. And slowly but surely, I really became a Giant apologist. Even in 58, I was a Giant apologist. I had a tough time rooting against them. Had a tough time rooting against them in 62 when the Mets were born, and there was no question I was a Met fan. I was going to be loyal to them, even though the Giants weren't loyal to me. I was going to be loyal to my baseball team, and I was in 62, but I couldn't help really wanting them to win in the World Series. And like I say, it turns out I lived out in Northern California the bulk of my life. I came out here in the Air Force in 1966. So, ironically, I had to follow the Mets long distance. Had the Giants up front in front of me. And there was a time in 1978, I was living in Sacramento when I actually was not actually in the employ of the Giants, but I was a contractor of theirs. I would get bus trips. I'd get groups into bus trips from Sacramento to San Francisco to see the Giants in Candlestick. And and I had a card, San Francisco Giants, and so I was somewhat employed, certainly got some bucks from them, and so I really have an affinity all these years. One can't have an affinity with the San Francisco Giants without thinking of Matty, Felipe, and Jesus Alou all playing in the same outfield at the same time with the Giants, three brothers from the Dominican, and they played a game or two as appeared in the same outfield. So that's who we're going to talk about, the Alous. And it even goes one step further. Felipe's son, Moish, was, isn't that how he pronounced it, Moishe?
I think it was Moise.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's how I pronounce it.
Moish. That's my great uncle, Moish. Hey, Moish.
Yeah, or Mose Allison. I never called him Mose. I always called him Moish. But he never played ball. We all had Moish in all. If you enjoyed Levy's rye bread, you had Moish in your right? You had an Uncle Moish somewhere. I did literally. My Uncle Moish and my Aunt Fagel were very dear to me, and actually wonderful relatives from my father's side, which were few and far between. The wonderful part, and I liked them a hell of a lot. On Yom Kippur, as a matter of fact, made Knedlach. Boy, that goes back a long way. Ian, we're going to talk about the Alous. By the way, Moish Alou was not Yiddish.
No, he
I
wasn't.
just want to. He wasn't. A lot of people thought he was. He was Yiddish by name only. And then there was Babalu. People forget about him, but that's for another show. Ian, take it away, my man.
Well, you know, it's funny. You moved. First, I'll comment on your move to California to San Francisco in '66, because again, I just released my show. Well, you just released my show on Home Team about the story of the origins of the San Francisco Giants. And for those who listen to the show, the building of the Candlestick Park was a huge mistake. And when Lefty O'Doul sat in the park for the first time, he said, what the heck were they thinking? Because it gets cold at the certain parts. And in 1966, on August 29th, the Beatles came to Candlestick Park. It would be their last live concert ever, and I have the actual tape that was done by their roadie, Mal Evans, and I have it authenticated with the paperwork. And even Paul McCartney said that night, it's kind of cold out here. And all these years I'm thinking, my God, it's August 29th. It's like stifling in the Northeast. But then I read up on Candlestick Park and understood what they were talking about. So that's just a little footnote for you moving in '66.
Yeah, built on the water. They, not on the water, very, very close to the water, there was a mountain that cut down the hill that protected the wind from coming in, and when that, to build the ballpark, so when that wind would make it incredibly frigid. The wind came off the water, and let me tell you something. It was cold. That same year in '66, I went out to see the Cincinnati Reds in a night game, stationed at Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield, which is about 60, 70 miles from the Stick. But, or maybe even less, maybe 50 miles from the Stick. But the difference in weather from Fairfield, which is inland, east of San Francisco, to San Francisco was incredible. And it was so cold, freezing. And the remarkable part of it all, when they built the park, they put in a heating system that never worked. The seats had a heating system under them, a little heater or whatever it was. It never worked, ever, from day one. So the wind made it a monstrosity. The wind would come in. When they went out to design the ballpark, they went out to visit the beautiful site right before 3 o'clock when the wind always comes in, and it was a folly. And they had to live with it for like years and years, and came so close to having to move because 3 times they almost moved. They almost moved to Colorado. They almost moved to St. Petersburg, somewhere else, San Jose or whatever it was. Came very close to moving. And finally, after all these years, about 10, 12 years ago now, they built AT&T Park. It's changed names. It was Pac Bell Park originally. They changed the name of it. You know how sponsors are nowadays at ballpark. They sell the rights and to the naming. And they have a gem. They have a beautiful park, again over the water, but in a different locale, where it's warmer. Still not totally warm, but not frigid cold and windy like in Candlestick. And, let's face it, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you get the stadium going and bring in some money and then build a winner, or do you build a winner first? And nowadays you have to have the income to build a winner, and that doesn't necessarily mean because you have the money that you'll spend it properly. And they were able to do that, and they were able to keep that money spent properly, and it was terrific. It is terrific. Not having a good year this year. So I've taken the I've taken the program basically to our memories, and finally we'll get to talk about the memories, because I think I'm winding down, and I'm going to shut up and let Ian take over.
Well, Ralph, that's the beauty of it. Once you get on a baseball kick, man, you could just see the love pour right out of you. And that's what you experience. And that's what this network does. That's what we do for our listeners and our viewers and everyone who taps into this show. But 1960s baseball was a lot different than, say, 1947. And, of course, the Alou brothers were in the thick of it. Again, you go back to the 1940s, you look at the Mexican leagues, you look at the Venezuelan league, you look at the Puerto Rican leagues. They were major leagues in these Latin and Central American countries, okay? And they had very talented players. I know a lot of people, a lot of Major League Baseball players worked out in the winter ball in Puerto Rico and in Venezuela and other leagues like that. I know that the umpire, Doug Harvey, was in the middle of a riot in Puerto Rico in 1962 when he went down to winter leagues and then came back up. And because of his handling of the riots down there, they made him a junior umpire the year after, and he would serve for the next 30 years, Doug Harvey. He would actually be the one to give Roberto Clemente his 3,000th ball. I think it was at Shea Stadium on September 30th, 1972, and that would be the last hit Roberto Clemente would have. And again, baseball's changing at this time. Black players have integrated mainly in the National League, but we had an influx of Latin American, Hispanic players. Roberto Clemente, Orlando Cepeda. We had
Minnie Minoso.
Minnie Minoso, the Cuban Comet.
Right. Javier Villa won the batting champion, a Mexican American, won the batting championship in I think it was 54 with the Indians, and went on to play the Giants in the World Series. And as a matter of fact, Veeck was the pioneer in the American League. We got to note that in terms of integration, of bringing in people that he brought in, Minnie Minoso, Satchel Paige,
Adobe.
Yeah. And before that, with the Browns, he integrated Hank Thompson, the third baseman in the 50s, who ended up his life kind of went downhill. Alcohol, robbed a drugstore, went to jail, had a heart attack, died. Rest in peace. But he was brought in as a St. Louis Brown initially. Anyway, the Latins started playing a big role in baseball, and with the Giants in particular, had a lot of Latin Americans on that 1962 World II team. They had Manny Mota. They had
Juan Marichal.
Jose Pagan was Latin. They did not yet. Jesus came up, and they tried to call him Jay for a while, which I thought was kind. His name is Jesus. Mm-hmm. And they brought him up, and they didn't want to call him Jesus and all this. So I thought it was very condescending of them, of baseball, to try to change his name, but he was known as Jay Alou for a couple of years. He hadn't been called up yet. He came up in 65. But Matty played on that 62 team, and Felipe was the starting right fielder, and Manny Mota was another guy who, if I didn't mention him, who played a Latin who played on that team. So they were very progressive with the Giants and Horace Stoneham, and I always found it incredible. Millions of people want to play baseball. Millions of kids. Mrs. Alou gives birth to 3 major league ball players, and again, and a grandson who played in the majors. So, props to her, Senora. And tell me something about the Alous that we may not know, Ian.
All right, well, if we take it on the premise that in 1979, the Pittsburgh Pirates, we all got that Pointer Sisters song, We Are Family, right? They even called Willie Stargell Pops, right?
Right.
Now,
yep. From Encinal High School in Alameda, I walk on his hallowed grounds all the time. They have a Willie Stargell Field. They have a Willie Stargell Boulevard in Alameda. He's a hometown hero, and he was Pops. And what you're going to say is Matty played on that team. Am I correct?
I think he was on the Pittsburgh Pirates in '79. I know he was traded in '66 from the Giants.
Oh, he might not. That may be after his time then.
Yeah,
he was a really good ball. I think he came close to winning a batting championship.
He did.
With the Pirates. If he didn't win, Giants had a load of outfielders that they supplied the National League with. Couldn't keep everybody. Goes back to Daddy Wags, Willie Kirkland. Daddy Wags was Leon Wagner, of course, and there were outfielders that came out of the organization. Go ahead.
All right, and you keep interrupting. This show keeps going on and on. People learn more and more every time. Now, again, you had the '79 Pirates. They were family, but no one was related. Now, you go to 1962, '63.
That was your analogy. I got you.
That's it.
They were family. These guys were truly familiar.
They were familiar. And, if you don't know, Ralph, I speak Spanish fluently. And
really?
You do. Yeah.
I speak Abyssal Yiddish. So I'll just say not only were they familiar, they were mishpacha.
Deva Mastaka. That's right. I speak
Right.
a little Yiddish too because of my background. In fact, I know 3 languages besides English: Italian, Spanish, and Yiddish. So, no.
Well, you're
Yeah.
blessed. I learned Yiddish as a kid. We were naturally Jewish by culture, but fairly atheistic by nature, and we didn't observe. My father was not an observer. He went through World War II and lost a big part of his family, and never found it in his heart to take us to, introduce us to the praying part of the idea of being Jewish. But we were heavy duty into the cultural part, so I learned what then was the conversational language in Israel and all over the world for Jews, which was Yiddish. It's kind of died out, and Hebrew is, which was a prayer language at the time. I never learned it, and it has pretty much taken over as a conversational language in the Jewish culture nowadays. Too bad as well, because Yiddish is priceless. But that's another story, as my old friend Matty Alou would say, "Wer weiß, amigo." You think he would say that?
I don't know. You know, Felipe and Matty. They were fiery, and I know Felipe Alou. I mean, when he coached Montreal and he did the coaching, he was a good manager, and he was a no nonsense manager when you think about it. But the notion of a pair of brothers was nothing new when the Alous came in. Again, the times were changing, but before them you had the Pavelski brothers, Stan and Harry, both pitched in the majors in the 1910s. Stan became a big enough star that he eventually was inducted to the Hall of Fame. You got the Deans in the 1930s. You got Paul and Dizzy, and they were on that Gas House gang that won the 1934 World Series. And of course you had the DiMaggio brothers, all 3 of them, Vince.
Hey, what did Paul say when Dizzy won 20 games and Paul came close? He says, "If I knew Dizzy was going to win 20, I'd have won 20 myself."
Yeah, that's right. Paul, I did say that.
Maybe it was the other way around. The DiMaggios. That was incredibly interesting. Dom playing in Boston with Ted Williams and his brother playing with the Yankees with a myriad of stars, and how close they remained. The DiMaggio and Williams were very, very close. I'm talking about Ted. I'm talking about Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams were very close. I don't know if it was through Dom or what, but again, I digress. Brothers. Hey, first time with the Alous that 3 brothers played in the majors, let alone on the same team, let alone at the same time in the same outfield. And Willie didn't sit often, but he sat a few games, or I don't know if they played the complete game or it was late innings, but they did appear in the same outfield, which in itself is incredible. And let it be known that Felipe went on to manage the San Francisco Giants at one time.
He did. He did. And he did. And again, he got his start. And again, we mentioned Alvin Dark last week, which gave you chills knowing he had 20 grandkids and all those great grandkids, and that he repopulated the world.
You reminded me.
Yeah, I got it. But these guys
did you do that just to pull my chain?
No, because
I got off the air and I figured it out that I could say in 3 generations there's like 400 people.
Yeah, half of California is going to be,
Alvin Dark, right? Half of Louisiana. His spirit will never die, Alvin Dark.
But he was the one that put all three of these guys in the outfield at once.
You're right.
And so I have to mention him because although it's history, and maybe it's a little dark history, and I say that because of his,
because of that you are.
But we had Felipe. He was the quintessential big brother. He was tall, strong, handsome. In fact, there was something regal about him. On a baseball diamond, he carried himself with grace and confidence and an extraordinary level of dignity. Felipe was the perfect gentleman. However, his game was a lot like Roberto Clemente's. Intense blend of controlled fury and relentless competitive hunger, and he would bring that to managing. Alou, the man, Felipe, the man, was a consummate sportsman. However, the player came after opponents with those daggers and had enough power and athleticism in his arsenal that he actually did inspire fear. And he could have been, he had a few injuries in here, but he was probably the best of the three. Now, he reached the big leagues in 1958 with the Giants, and his most productive years in San Francisco was 62 and 63 on the dark again. He went to the World Series in 62, which they could have beat the Yankees. I know how David Halberstam talked about the 64 World Series in his book, October of 64, when the Yankees played St. Louis, and St. Louis was pretty much an integrated team, and the Yankees were still basically white, except for Al Downing and, of course, Ellie Howard. But the 62 team, again, you can make an argument. You have a lot of African Americans in, you got a lot of Latino players. So the distinctions between National League and American League are drawn lines right down. The Alou brothers were right in the middle of it. Now, in his bookend years with Felipe in 62 and 3, he averaged 22 home runs for the years, 90 ribbies, and 10 steals a season. And his arm was awesome in the outfield, that he had a record 16 outfield assists in that span as well. Now, physically, Matty Alou, his brother, was the antithesis of Felipe. 2 years his senior, diminutive and wiry. He had to tailor his game accordingly. He didn't have that natural talent that Felipe had. He utilized the dead ball way of hitting, slap hitting, and speed. So, you get the Ty Cobbs of the world and the Trispeakers. That's the kind of ball Matty played. And although it was less dynamic than Felipe, Matty carved out a niche of his own and joined Felipe in San Francisco, debuting with the Giants in 1960. And once he was paired with Felipe, Matty proved a perfect complement. He hit .310 in his rookie season, and his slashing style and quickness, just like the old days. And now again, Dodgers got Maury Wills. The Rod Carews is coming up, and the Lou Brocks are coming up, and now you're going to have this style of play, which Matty Alou pretty much, I'd say, pioneered. You had Roberto Clemente, who had the speed, but he also had the power. Now, again, we have a little brother here, and the little brother was Jesus, who had
the same. He had the same pre-batting ritual where he'd stretch his back and as Clemente did Jesus. He would put the bat in back of his back and stretch his shoulders and what happened. He would emulate his fellow countrymen. Well, actually, they weren't fellow countrymen, or were they? Yes, of course. Clemente.
Yeah, they were
the Dominican as well. It was Pagan who was from Puerto Rico. He was the one.
Right.
The one Latin who wasn't, and I didn't give Dark much credit. He ended up keeping that team in 62 pretty much together. There were a lot of rumors about cliques and what have you, and the Latins staying with themselves. But I have it on good word from Tim Haller, who was the co-host on this show for a lot of months. Timmy's dad, Tom, was a catcher on that team, and Tom passes it on to Timmy. There was no racial tension whatsoever. That everybody got along beautifully, and I believe it. They went all the way to the World Series, and but for the line drive of Bobby Richardson to hits of Bobby Richardson by McCovey, and before that, the same Matty Alou being held up by former New York Giant first baseman and now third base coach with the Giants back then. He held them up at third, and he didn't take the plate. That run never came into score. That was the tying run. And Matty Alou said in criticism of Lockman that were it him, he'd have run right through the stop sign. He'd have taken the plate. So Matty wasn't particularly aggressive along those lines that day. But as you say, he went on to have a terrific career, mostly with the Pirates. And as did Manny Mota, went on to break some pinch hitting records. And Dark led to their progression, let's put it that way, or didn't hold them back. His trip with Cepeda, his criticism, that was scandalous. And so there are, as we talked about last week, many facets to Alvin Dark. But you're right, and I hadn't thought of that. He was the one that put them in the outfield for the first time together. So he had moments of being colorblind, and that's nice.
But you know something? This is what's interesting. When you have an outfield that contains Willie Mays and Willie McCovey as well, and McCovey was first base, you know, how are we going to get all these three guys, these three brothers together? And again, I just want to mention Jesus. He had a decent career too. I mean, nothing to 280 over 15 seasons with 32 home runs and 31 career stolen bases. But still, 280 today would bring in a cool few $1 million for a couple of teams looking.
Oh yeah, more than that, my friend. Minimum wage is like over $500,000.
Yeah.
You come into the league as a raw rookie, and you're making $500,000.
Yep.
And I don't care. You talk about inflation. That's craziness from when I was a kid, when it was literally $6,000 a year was the minimum wage. And to drag money out of these GMs when they didn't have to, when it was the only game in town, and you couldn't go anywhere, and players were restricted, and you can say they were making more than the average wage, but the restrictions were horrible. You couldn't quit your job and take another job. There's no way to do it. Sal Magley and the like, I think they were responsible for early unions and a change when they went to the Mexican League, and they proved that, and then later on the Continental League was proposed. Change comes very slowly with baseball, and it did come. The pendulum has done swung the other way, and God bless them. They found a way where the owners continue to make money and the players share in it, and that's nice. God, more Alou. Give me more Alou, Ian.
Well, this is what happened. 63 was a big disappointment for the Giants. Again, they came off of a couple of outs, one out really, of winning the 62 World Series. We could see a change happening. It's still a very powerful club, but it was a disappointing season. And, of course, in 63, the Dodgers would go on. The pitching was unbelievable. And I spoke with this last week with David Nemec and Alan Plumpkin. From 63 to 68, the numbers fell off in hitting. And you could see that. You could see it was a pitcher. So you have Drysdale and you have Koufax. And Koufax had hit his stride by 62, just dominating. And he would dominate it till the time he left in 66. And Drysdale was just the same. And these were the years of the pitchers. And so
Gibson, Ferguson Jenkins.
Oh, yeah. And Whitey Ford,
Right.
Ralph Huck. He decided to play Whitey every four.
Let me correct you, Ian. You're a young man. It was Ralph Houck.
Houck. That's right. Fritz Peterson always tells me it's Houck because he loved Ralph Houck. He loved him. But with Houck, you had him, and you had Mel Stoudemire come up, and you had Jim Palmer, and you had all these great pitchers, and it really was a pitching. The pitching won it for the Dodgers in 63 and 65. 66 was the year of Baltimore. 67, the impossible dream, and in 68, I mean, no one could hit anything. I think Carter Yastrzemski was the only one who made it over 300 that year, and you had Gibson.
He won the batting title with like a 301 average.
Yeah.
And that's when they decided to lower the mound. Great equalizer.
Yeah, and Gibson was all pissed off. Not only did they lower the mound, but they shook up the leagues. Now the next year would have the first championship series, and now you have two divisions in one league. So everything in baseball changed after 68. And, of course, you could listen to that in the Tim Wendell interview I did on the 68 season. But here on September 15th, 1963, the Giants were beating the hell out of Pops and the Pirates. And, they would win at 13-5. But San Francisco manager Alvin Dark again juggled his lineup to produce one of the great moments in Giants history. In the bottom of the sixth inning, moves Felipe, who had started the game in right field, to left, and brought Jesus in to play right. And then 2 innings later, Doc shifted Felipe again, moving him to center, and brought Matty in to play left. As Pirate hitters stepped up to the plate and peered into the outfield, they saw what everyone else saw. 3 Alou brothers, the pride of Santo Domingo, in the Dominican, standing side by side by side, sharing the same exclusive expanse of turf at the highest level the game had to offer. And for that one moment, that one and only moment, that Pennsylvania autumn afternoon, the cohesive concepts of teamwork and family melted into one. We had 3 major league siblings playing defense together in the same outfield. It was a remarkable snapshot in history, and one that has never, ever been captured again in big league history. But unfortunately, as you know, Ralph, good things don't last. The underpinnings of the games on the business side, the Alous never took the field again. Felipe was traded to Atlanta after the 63 season. Matty was dispatched to the Pirates before the 66 season. And, of course, Jesus drifted to the Houston Astros in 69.
Beautiful commentary, Ian. I'm going to end it right on there. There's nothing we can do to top that. We'll be back. We'll be back next week. A Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Top-notch Ian Kahanowitz. Keep coming back, my friend.
I will.
That's all I can ask. Thank you,
God
sir.
bless you, Ralph.
To those of you out there, keep on keeping on. We shall return. Adios.